Hi, hello, good morning. I finally have Bohemian Cherry, the Rouge Experience lipstick from Lisa Eldridge that was delayed in production when the original colors released. So she released this new line of lipsticks, the Rouge Experience, which are her refillable components. So I actually just bought the refill for Bohemian Cherry because I already had my component from before with my initials engraved on it. As you can see here. Now that I've had the lipstick for a couple of months with the engraved, initials on it, I want to tell you, I don't think I feel that special because my lipstick is engraved. So in hindsight, if you're feeling like, I don't know whether I care for the engraving, yes or no, just like order it without the engraving, because ultimately the bigger portion of the lipstick that you will be enjoying is the rest of the component, and you're not really going to be looking at the bottom all that much. Anyway, just wanted to throw that in there in case some of you were doubting whether or not to have the lipstick engraved. Now, if you want to make it really special because you're getting it for a present, for someone who will really appreciate it, totally get it. But for me, as personal experience, I can tell you a couple of months later, I don't find myself caring that much about the engraving. Anyway, I thought we can do a little Lisa Eldridge centered look. So I'm going to put on my base makeup, blush, highlighter, that kind of thing. Then I'm going to put on the lipstick, and then we're going to do an eyeshadow look with Lisa Eldridge. But I wanted to see how the lipstick looks without any other makeup, just so you can also see, not be distracted by eyeshadow, and also because I want to see what the lipstick actually looks like before I go on applying eyeshadow. And I will also, of course, be doing a couple of comparison swatches with other brownie type lipsticks in Lisa Eldridge's range. Now I'm going to start off doing my look. We're going to go for the Inglot eyeshadow base as usual to prime my eyelids. And in the meantime, I thought I could comment a little bit on my previous video, the video where we talked about the whole debacle with slurry versus baked gelée versus what should we call these eyeshadows from Pat McGrath Labs, which we call Blitz Astrals, that so far we've been calling baked gelée. And the first thing I wanted to say is that I am absolutely loving all of the comments that I got on this video, because clearly some of you have gone even further down the rabbit hole than I have. I had already found a couple of things here and there, but some of you had taken it to a whole new level, and I'm absolutely loving it. There were definitely a couple of very interesting and informative comments. I also put a couple of links. I actually included a couple of extra links in the description box of that video in case you're wondering. I'm going to take the Prada Reveal Foundation in the shade LN5, and I'm actually not going to mix it with anything because I will pair that with my Hourglass Dim Light powder, and because the Dim Light powder is a little bit darker, I actually think it really corrects for the tone of the foundation being a little too light for me. And I've actually been enjoying the combination of the two. I don't have the Lisa Eldridge foundation, by the way. That's why we're not using a Lisa Eldridge base product here. In case you've missed my videos from before, I did try the Lisa Eldridge foundation a couple of times via her sample cards, and I didn't really jive with it much. I think it applies beautifully. It's one of the most beautifully applying foundations, upon first application, but for some reason it just doesn't get along with my skin type, and it just starts to slide around and disappear towards the end of the day. And I'm very picky with my base products. I don't like to have too many because I'm not the kind of person that buys different foundations for different occasions. I only have one occasion: oily skin. Well, normal to oily skin. Leaning even oilier when I am hormonal. So I really want foundations that can last well throughout the day without me having to worry looking at myself in the mirror every few hours. Now, the Prada foundation I've talked about before. I really like this foundation. However, when I first apply it, I feel like, meh, it's okay. Nothing groundbreaking. It's like a light to medium coverage foundation. But after a few hours, this foundation ripens on your skin, and it starts to become glowy and juicy and healthy without making you look greasy. It looks absolutely fabulous. A couple of hours of wear into the day though. I'm going to take the Skin Correct concealer from Dior in the shade 1N. Now, I wanted to add maybe a couple of extra things after the discussion that I had with you in the comments under my previous video. So I wanted to specify that after, reading up a little bit more on the process of how slurry eyeshadows are post-processed, and I think I brushed upon that even in that video, but it does seem very likely that what the lipstick lesbians are referring to as these are not baked is because it is very possible that the slurry eyeshadows that are present in the Mothership palette, the Blitz Astros that we love and adore from Motherships 1 through 9, are perhaps a slurry that hasn't really been baked, but it has been processed via a different type of drying, such as like pressure vacuuming, or I don't know, it's very hard to tell. But Claudia from B.O.B. Mindset, I still hope she's going to actually make a video on the topic as well. She mentioned that the owner of RMS Beauty has mentioned that the RMS blushes are not actually baked. And I've had one of those blushes. I don't have it anymore, unfortunately, so I can't show you, but I've had one of those blushes, and those blushes do feel like a what we call baked gelée. So if the owner of RMS says that these are not baked, then I'm willing to believe that you can create that kind of like what Claudia called hard gelée texture. I think that's maybe an apt description of this formula, without actually baking it. Now, taking the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Powder in the shade Dim Light, which, like I said, slightly corrects for this foundation maybe being a tad too light. And I love, ironically, this foundation with the Hourglass powder. I think it actually wears better. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it wears quite nicely with the Prada setting powder as well, but there is something about the combination of the ambient lighting with the Prada foundation that is absolutely magical on my skin, at the very least. So I'm really enjoying it. I've been wearing these two together a lot. I'm going to quickly do my brows with the Too Faced Laminating Brow Wax. So yes, to go back to the discussion, possibly they're not actually baked in the post-processing. But of course, that's just a speculation. I can't be entirely sure, of course, that the RMS blushes and the Blitz Astros from Pat McGrath are post-processed in the same way, but I think we shouldn't take it for a fact that these are indeed a baked gelée. You know, it's been a hot minute. I think I'm going to bronze / contour with the Victoria Beckham, I don't know how this is called. Oh yeah, the contour stylus in the shade Sandstone. Mine is in a slightly deeper shade because I really liked the undertone of this bronzer contour type of shade. So I'm just going to draw a little line here, and then I'm going to blend that out with this really old Wayne Goss brush that I don't like for foundation, but I like for blending out cream products, especially like contour bronzer type products. So I'm just going to blend this out a bit, and I'm also going to flick it up. I am planning on using my Dante's Dream blush from Lisa Eldridge. It appears one of you told me that there is now a new blush shade listed on her website. I didn't see it personally. I know that we've all been waiting for quite a while now for her to bring back her cream blushes, and finally they're coming back. For those of you who don't remember, she released for a very brief period of time cream blushes. Unfortunately, the outside component of those was a total bust because they started to pop out from the backside. If you tried to squeeze the product out, I think the product was just too thick to fit through the small opening that was on the packaging. So a lot of us ended up depotting our blushes. A lot of our blushes have, as you will see in a little bit, completely dried out. But with that said, I want to say that my blush, even though it is dry AF, it's still fine to use. So I deposited mine in this container here because at the time it seemed like the most airtight container that I have. And you can see this is Dante's Dream. Dante's Dream is completely dried out. However, what I do is I just take a little spatula, I scoop a little bit of this out, and then I apply it on the back of my hand, and I just use my fingers to sort of like distribute the product to make it a bit creamy, because it does like warm up on the back of the skin. And then I will just use my brush to apply it back on the skin because it still looks fabulous on the skin. It might have dried out in the container, it might not look pretty anymore because certainly this doesn't look as pretty as having it in the original container, but the actual product still performs. And I have a really hard time throwing away things that still work, so I'm going to keep using this blush until it becomes completely unusable. So I'm going to take a different fluffy synthetic blending brush, and I'm just going to apply the product on the face. And as you can see, it still looks fine. I'm not having any issues blending it out. It still looks beautiful and natural on the skin, and I will just continue to use it for a good amount of time before I purchase another one of these shades when she re-releases them. I think even if she re-releases this range, I'm going to, you know, lay off for a little bit. But it's Lisa Eldridge, she can sell me stale bread, so who knows. And I'm going to keep it in the cream product category, and I'm going to take my beautiful stick highlighter from Victoria Beckham in the shade Pearl. I really love this highlighter. I've talked about it a lot since I bought it. This is like the most beautiful, like mermaid just came out of the water cheekbone type of situation. It is so pretty. It just has the most beautiful sheen without, you know, looking sparkly or glittery or emphasizing texture. It just looks like the most beautiful natural highlight, and I absolutely love it. If you asked me what one of my favorite products that I have ever tried from Victoria Beckham is, I think I'm going to name this highlighter. It is just absolutely glorious. And now it is finally time for us to try the lipstick. As I mentioned, Bohemian Cherry is the newest addition to the range, and it is also the darkest color in the range. Now when I saw this shade, I thought, is this the Rouge Experience version of Velvet Decade, the discontinued Velvet Decade that I absolutely adore? Now, I don't know whether this is more leaning towards Decade or Myth, which unfortunately I don't have, but let me show it to you up close and personal. This is the beautiful Bohemian Cherry. Even just looking at it like this, I think there's more purple in here, and I think there's more brown in Decade. But let's watch them side by side. So let's put a swatch of Bohemian Cherry right here. No, I think this is going to be closer to her discontinued Velvet Myth, not Decade. So this is Decade. Let's watch Decade right next to Bohemian Cherry. Right here. As you can see, Decade is brown, it's much more neutral in tone, it's like this beautiful, delightful chocolate color, whereas this is much more like a deep berry purple. And finally I wanted to swatch up against Painterly, because Painterly, one of her Luxuriously Lucents, has a very similar, I feel like, vibe to Bohemian Cherry, but possibly just not as... Okay, also not as purple. Bohemian Cherry is actually quite purple in tone. So that's interesting, and actually reminding me of, I want to say, a lipstick from Pat McGrath in the shade Exotica, from like the long discontinued Lux Trans line. I don't know if I'm a little bit disappointed that it's so purple. I really was hoping that it's going to be more of like a Decade type shade, and now I'm thinking, oh gosh, if this is similar to Exotica from Pat McGrath Labs, I don't actually use Exotica all that often. It's a very pretty color, but it's not the type of shade that I sport on the regular. But okay, let me first remove my balm. I'm going to line my lips, and I'm actually going to use Current from MAC to line my lips, because I think it's a really well-matching shade. I'm going to apply a little bit of my MAC Prep and Prime lip primer. A very pretty color, but you know what? I actually don't think it's like a dupe for Exotica. I'm going to swatch Exotica, I have to. So here is Exotica. I'm not sure you're interested in this comparison, but it's the comparison you didn't ask for. So here we have Bohemian Cherry, and here we have Exotica. I mean, they're very, very, very similar. But I think there's maybe a little bit more desaturation to the tone of Bohemian Cherry, whereas this is more of a saturated eggplant purple, if that makes any sense. When I put it on my lips, I thought this doesn't look as saturated, and it has a little bit of like a neutrality to the tone. I don't know how to describe it. It's a really well-balanced lipstick. I think Exotica actually looks vampier on my lips than this does. This is still a dark lipstick, obviously, but I think compared to Exotica, at least on me, Exotica looks deeper and more vampy. Okay, let's do an eye look. I'm going to stick with neutral eyeshadows because I think those would probably fit best with this look. And I'm going to go into Betty and the two neutrals again, and then we'll see where we take it from there. And while we're at it, I wanted to discuss the Lisa Eldridge formula with you, because I found out something that I never really paid attention to before, so I wanted to share the wisdom. So the first shade I'm going to take from Betty is again this one here. This is the taupey brown, which is called Talk to the Paw. And I'm going to apply that in the outer portion of my lid. So, very interesting. Gather around, children, my children. One of you mentioned in my comments that the Lisa Eldridge formula is also a slurry. And I haven't really done much rearranging of my palettes. I have a few shades here and there that are like swapped around a bit, but not that many, and I don't think I've ever paid attention. And then when we introduced the term, you know, back-injected slurry into our vocabularies, I was quite interested like what this formula is about. Like, is it present in other eyeshadows? Is it possible that the new formula from Pat McGrath is this back-injected slurry? And how could that be if it is still in a metal pan? And then one of you commented that the Lisa Eldridge eyeshadows are a back-injected slurry, and they have a little hole in the back, just like, you know, those back-injected eyeshadows in the House Labs palette that the Lipstick Lesbians were showing in their reel. And then I thought, ooh, I am going to investigate. I'm going to go open my Lisa Eldridge palette, I'm going to pop the eyeshadow pans out, and I'm going to knock myself out, because how could I have never noticed this before? So then I came here, I took out the Betty palette, and I popped out the gold shade. I popped out the bronzy gold shade from the Betty palette, which I'm going to show you in a second. And I could have told you even to start with for a fact that the mattes from Lisa Eldridge feel like a cream to powder, so they do not feel like a standard, you know, pressed powder eyeshadow. But her metallic eyeshadow formula, to me, always felt like a pressed powder. So, coincidentally, I started off by, you know, taking a look at the pan of this eyeshadow. So this is the bronzy gold from the Betty palette. And then when you turn it around, it's just your good old metal pan. I thought, am I blind? Can I not see a hole? What's going on? This shade looks just like a standard pressed metallic. So then I continued popping out shades from the Betty palette, and a bunch of them looked like this, like regular, you know, pressed eyeshadows. And then finally, I popped out the shade that I put on my lids. So that's this shadow here, and lo and behold, when you turn it around, look at the back of this eyeshadow. This is definitely a back-injected slurry. It has exactly the little hole here in the middle, so they fill up the eyeshadow from here, then they like vacuum dehydrate the eyeshadow, and then they definitely leave this to air dry. This is not baked in any sort of way. So the Lisa Eldridge eyeshadows are not all back-injected slurries. Some of them are good old pressed metallic eyeshadows. Also, this shade here, the Lavendering type shade, is a pressed metallic eyeshadow. It's not one of the back-injected slurries. The matte eyeshadows are all in that back-injected slurry formula, but Lisa Eldridge's formula, not all back-injected slurry. However, this tells us that a back-injected slurry can be in a metal pan. It doesn't have to be in like a plastic grid of sort, it can actually be in a metal pan, which I thought was very interesting, and I wanted to share that with you. Of course, we're not going to know what the shades in Petalmorphosis are unless, you know, we pan one of those eyeshadows, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. One of you did mention repressing eyeshadows from the Moonlit Seduction palette, and you mentioned that those are just regular metal pans, so at the very least those do not seem to be back-injected slurries. By the way, now I'm going to take my favorite shade in this palette, which is the shade Posh, and I'm just going to use my finger to apply it on my lids, because this shadow is just absolutely magical and beautiful, and I'm in love with it. But unfortunately, unless we can take out the pan, we will never know. So it will remain in the realm of possibilities and speculation that the new formula from Pat is indeed a back-injected slurry. Just in case anyone was curious about this extremely nerdy detail that I discovered in my Lisa Eldridge palettes. And I'm just kind of also going over the taupe brown shade with Posh, just mixing the two of them together for a beautiful neutral eye. I'm going to take a pencil brush and go back into the taupe brown, and I'm going to run that on my lower lashes. I'm sticking with a very neutral look, but I am going to put like a little fun inner corner. Also, for those of you who perhaps have bought Bohemian Cherry and have Velvet Myth, could you please update us if the two are quite similar to each other? My feeling is that if there is a similar velvet in the line, it's probably going to be Velvet Myth. I'm going to apply Starlight in my inner corner and like the inner portion of my lids, but first I'm going to put this creamy base from Kiko. This is just one of their eyeshadow sticks in a beige color, and I'm going to smoosh that around now with my finger. And I'm going to grab a little bit of this beautiful duochrome shade here, the shade Starlight, and that's going to go here as a pop of inner corner fun. Super pretty. I'm really enjoying Betty. Betty is such a beautiful palette. I have no regrets about buying it. It was a bit of a spontaneous decision to buy it once I realized that it's limited edition, and unfortunately I think by now Betty is gone. Maybe she will do a restock at some point, like a second and final restock. I'm not actually sure, but as of now I think Betty is gone, but it's very pretty and I really like it. Alright you guys, so this is the final look. Final thoughts or thoughts about Bohemian Cherry. Bohemian Cherry is a beautiful color, and I think what's really going for it is the fact that it has a little bit of like a neutral vein in the tone and a desaturatedness in its nature that really works in making it appear not as vampy and as overpowering as it would if it were, you know, more like Exotica from Pat McGrath Labs. I really like this about this color, but if you like me thought that this is anything close to Decade, you would be disappointed. Am I a teeny tiny bit disappointed that it's not more similar to Decade? Like 10%. Also, it has cherry in the name. Why the hell was I thinking that it would be a brown? But yeah, you know, in some lighting, in some photos, this lipstick really appeared to be something in between Velvet Mid and Velvet Decade, and it was not going to be quite clear until we have it in our hands which one it's going to be, and I think it is Mid. So it's safe to say that I really like the lipstick. I think it's a really beautiful color. I think it is one of the most, you know, wearable, like dark aubergine colors that I've ever had in my collection, because I've had a ton. I really like this tone of lipstick. I've had a ton of lipsticks in this tone from Urban Decay and, like I said, from Pat McGrath Labs, but I've always found them just a little bit too overpowering, and I really hope that this is finally the eggplant cherry color for me that I can wear without feeling like it's just too vampy for me. I don't know what you guys think. Do you think this lipstick looks vampy on me, or do you think that it is on the cusp of looking too vampy but not quite? Thank you so much to the person who commented about the back-injected slurry nature of the eyeshadows from Lisa Eldridge, because I had not given it much thought and I had not looked at the back of the pans, and I'm glad I did, because now I feel, you know, 10% more educated in makeup formulations. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are. Did you pick up Bohemian Cherry? What do you think about it? As usual, thank you so very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!